Thank you, Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. We had a joint hearing on Thursday on the very issues that my colleague just mentioned with the Assembly Judiciary and the Senate Judiciary. I want to start my remarks off first by praising the Senate Chair of Judiciary, our colleague from District Number 9, who did an exceptionally good job and received well-deserved accolades for her work there. However, I'm here to frankly complain about the process. We actually had a hearing on 3 bills, and as legislators, one of our jobs is to hear both sides of an issue. While we all have very strong personal opinions on many of these things, our job in what we call a hearing is to actually allow both sides an opportunity to present their views. And this so-called hearing that occurred on Thursday actually was an advocacy demonstration that was masquerading as a hearing. Why do I say that? Well, very simple. I went back and actually did the math, and we discovered that the proponents of the bill had 1 hour and 45 minutes to present their side of the issue. And those of us who are in opposition had no opportunity. There was no opposition presentation allowed in the hearing. Not only that, for those of us that wanted to ask questions, we were limited to a single question, and we were not allowed to have even a follow-up. And so what we called a hearing was, in fact, a one-sided demonstration against a position that I hold as a Second Amendment right. Now, if we as legislators are going to do our job, it is very important that we make sure that in our committees, and I was a chair of that exact committee, and I always made sure that both sides, even if I didn't agree with the opposition side, had an opportunity to present fairly its views. Now, for whatever reason, we are drifting away from that. And this hearing is about as good an example as that, or a bad example, if you will, that I can think of. Hearings should be just that, a hearing. Not an advocacy, not a demonstration, but an opportunity for us as legislators to make up our mind after hearing both sides of the question. Now, I will say that this is my 7th legislative session, and I have, over the years, although I have very strong opinions on lots of issues, I've been privileged to hear opposition testimony and learn from people who disagree with me in many cases. And I think as a legislative body, one of our responsibilities going forward from this minute is to make sure that every single hearing we have, whether we like it or not, and whether or not it's going to be controversial or not, we make sure that everybody in the state of Nevada knows that we gave a fair and impartial opportunity for both sides to be heard in our legislative chambers. And this hearing was a sham. It did not do that. It gave 1 hour and 45 minutes to the opposition, and then for those of us who testified in opposition, they were granted 1 minute, and we as legislators were not allowed to even ask them a question, with one exception in the hearing. So I just want to make sure as we go forward, and these are obviously, as my colleague just pointed out, exceptionally sensitive issues. They are not cut and dried, simple things. There are a lot of very complicated portions to this beyond the emotional appeal of it. There are all sorts of reasons for the laws we have and for the Second Amendment of our Constitution, and where firearms often are used in a very positive way to actually prevent violence. So
you don't
because
say.
We spent 1 hour and 45 minutes discussing all the terrible things about firearms,
You wouldn't know about all of the good things that firearms do, though, would you?
we had a very one-sided hearing, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We should make our opinions and our votes based on being educated in as round a way as possible in those hearings. So I just want to encourage those of you, because I'm in the minority, all right? And when I was in the majority, I made sure that your side got every opportunity to have a fair and impartial hearing before our committees. And what I saw on Thursday was a disgrace. It was not a hearing. It was an advocacy. That belonged out front where they wanted to do a demonstration and get the press there, fine and dandy. But to call that a hearing when it absolutely was not a hearing, but one-sided presentation. And then to grant experts. I actually had Dr. John Lott, who had agreed to come here if we wanted, and who is a nationally known expert on these issues, as well as the lobbyist for the National Rifle Association. I tried to get him at least 5 minutes. No, they were granted, like everybody else, 1 minute with no questions from the panels whatsoever. And by the way, we don't get a second bite at the apple like we normally do. That hearing was a joint hearing, and the Senate will never hear it again. And so the people like myself who want to have an opportunity to question some of these folks have been denied that opportunity. Therefore, thank goodness we still have the floor. We haven't figured out a way to shut everybody down on the floor, so at least I can advocate for my side somewhat here. But all I'm asking for, and what I'm saying right now, is not advocacy for my views. It's simply a fairness in the process. Everybody in the state of Nevada should know that at the Nevada legislature, both sides will be granted an equal opportunity to present their views before those of us that are going to pass laws affecting over 3 million human beings.
Right, because
that is not
matters.
at all unreasonable, and it's certainly not something that we as legislators should turn away from. We should embrace that. We should gladly listen to both sides, and after that, and weighing all the evidence that's presented, then make rational judgments based on a full and impartial hearing as much as humanly possible. And with that, Madam President, Vice President Pro Tem, I want to thank you for that, and I want to encourage my colleagues as we go forward, especially those of you in the majority, to make sure that we do this process as fair and as equally and impartially as we reasonably can. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen here in Nevada, folks. They're going to have a really hard time disarming Nevadans. I'm going to say that right now. They're going to have a really tough time disarming Nevadans.